Today we're looking at the Rise of Timur, or the Timurids, in EU5. Before we get into it, if you guys want to support the channel, go ahead and pre-purchase EU5 with my link. I know you guys are going to want to play it. For all you doubters out there, come on. You're not going to play EU5 on release? You're crazy. Anyways, I don't have that kind of self-control that I could resist playing EU5 on release personally, but that being said, if you guys enjoy the content, consider subscribing. Let's get into some Rise of Timurs. Yes, Timurs. Multiple people, I guess. So we're going to be starting as Barless. And what you can note about Barless is they're a subject of Chagatai, and you can't really do much when you're these guys. But you'll notice if you look in your characters that you'll see a young Timur. And so what I like to do is try to get him some good education. Of course, you can't start educating somebody until they turn 3. Don't quote me on that, but I want to say it's 3. And it's going to cost 250 to pay for that. So we're going to go into like heavy debt as these guys. Like, we don't really do anything as Barless other than that. We're just kind of chilling, waiting for this guy to come of age so he can take over the nation. So just kind of a 5-speed and chill. That's what I like to call it, at least, type of vibe. We're just kind of going to 5-speed through until you get to 1360. One thing to note, I have played these guys in previous builds. I left a lot of feedback about how they were too overpowered, and they have been significantly toned down. And so you love to see that, or maybe you don't love to see that. But overall, my objective is to form the Mongol Empire. I'm not sure if it's Empire or like Mongolia, something like that. And to do that, you're going to need some specific provinces, but in general, you're going to need 3,277 locations. So it's not a little bit of locations, it's a lot. And the Timurids, when you actually become the Timurids, you start as 34 out of 3,277. So you have a little bit of a hill to climb. That's kind of the overall objective of the campaign. We'll get into what we're going to do a little bit as we go into it. So anyhow, we just go ahead and wait until 1360. And that is when Timur is going to come of age. You're going to get an event that essentially allows you to annex Barless and become an independent nation. Just to give you an idea of how the borders kind of change a bit, we're just going to go ahead and draw the land that you're given when you become the Timurids. So to start off, you can see we're given quite a bit of land when we become the Timurids. A lot of these subjects just kind of become ours that were Chagatai's. And just for some numbers, we're going to start off with 3.08k ducats to work with, but we're losing 10 a month. And we have 861k population, as well as a 1.2 standing army. So a bit of a nice start, but it's kind of a situation where we start with a lot of money, but we don't really have a way to generate more. We also have 3,000 manpower, which is a lot for the time. Probably one of the most in the game, maybe behind Egypt. We have access to a unique building. I'm not going to try to pronounce this, but what this building does is gives 50 manpower a month, which is crazy high. For context, an armory gives 10 a month. So you can see this is the equivalent of having multiple armories. However, this building does cost 200. And if I adjust that for the current price, it would be 163 starting out in that campaign. So a crazy, crazy good military building. To note, we're an army-based country, meaning if we lose all our armies, it would be game over. And immediately you'll see some buffs that Timur is given. The first one is called, I'm not going to write it all, but it's called the Scourge from Central Asia. And what this one's going to do, so what this is going to do mostly is give plus 50% levies, as well as auto conquer during war, which is a crazy powerful ability. That essentially means if you occupy a province, it immediately goes over to you. For those that play EU4 and are familiar with the synthetics mechanic, it's like this. He's also going to be given 4 ruler traits. These are going to be Conqueror, Tactical Genius, Cruel, and Strategist. So a bunch of things. And really the important one, the one that makes him very, very powerful, is going to be the Strategist one. And this one's going to give 25% siege ability, 33% assault ability, and 10 discipline. So obviously this is the best general in the game that you can get. He's got 100 military skill, at least in my game at this point, so he's definitely super cracked. But to note, if he dies, you're going to lose the ability of the extra levies and the auto conquer. So you kind of only get these crazy bonuses while he's alive. And one of the other things was like lowers separatism as well, so he's kind of good at dealing with rebels a little bit. Doesn't get much rebels as well, so it's while he's alive, things are looking good for you. And then let's talk about the situation that you get. You're going to have Plan Invasion. This one's going to give you a claim on your neighbors, but at the cost of 5 antagonism centered around that location. And then number 2 is Select Core Region. This one's really powerful. It essentially makes one region of your choice cored. That means that you would get plus 20 control in that area, essentially. But normally a core is something that you have integrated and is cultural and your religion. So majority of your culture and religion. So this is really good. Third is a reform into monarchy. And this is going to give you a special government reform that gives you an extra cabinet seat and then negative 20% antagonism received, as well as plus 50% amount looted. And it gives you plus one possible government reforms. So essentially, it's just a free government reform for you. And that's going to be important that you get this before he dies. Otherwise, you're going to still be a horde and there'd be a succession crisis and all sorts of bad things. So that won't be good. And to note, you do need to have 40% land to make something a core. I didn't mention that before. And to be a monarchy, you have to do this action. The last thing you can do is promote a regional culture. And this is going to take that core region and make it your primary culture. In addition, it's going to grab the language of that culture and it's going to be your new court language. And you're given 2 additional cultures to promote as accepted cultures for free. So super powerful, but you do have to have 100% of the provinces in the region, or I should say, this is EU5, 100% of the locations in a region. And so in my campaign, my plan is to make this region East China, because I think this is the most valuable region in the game that we can kind of access at the moment, and it has a lot of dev. So that's our plan. So we kick off our first invasion. We go ahead and plan an invasion on Chagatai. And to explain how this war works, for those that play EU4, I want to imagine you're the Europeans and they're the natives. And even if you don't play EU4 or haven't played it, you can probably understand still that, you're the Europeans and they're the natives. It doesn't really go well for the natives. We go ahead and invade these guys. Remember, we have auto conquest, so we don't ever have to piece anyone out like that. If we just occupy it, we get the area, and our armies crush. So they might have a lot of guys, and there's a lot of battles, but we just crush them pretty much, and then we start just auto conquering. There's a lot of forts. And one thing to note about kind of our technology too is we're trying to go for peasant levies because we can't assault forts. One thing I wanted to note, these are your values that are maxed. So you have max spiritualist, max belligerent, max land, max offensive, and max aristocracy. So pretty interesting there. What that really means for you is that you have really good siegeability on top of that, because you get plus 10 assault and siegeability from offense, and that's obviously going to be pretty helpful. Anyway, I just kind of wanted to note that this is a very unique thing to these guys too, and not many nations are like this. But the point being is these wars aren't crazy hard. You have a ton of guys. You have Temur. He's kind of a god among men. The only thing that's hard is that you're only good when he's the general. So if you split your up you guys, it's just like not so good anymore. But anyways, this war actually takes a while. There's a lot of forts and that sort of stuff. But we're going to go ahead and be able to just fully annex these guys within 5 years, which is kind of a long time. Maybe I could play that better and that sort of thing. But, it is what it is. There are a lot of forts, as I said, and you can't really assault. That's why we're going to go for that peasant levy tech we talked about earlier. And you do get antagonism now when you do this, so you got to be really careful about coalitions. So, we kind of want to improve relations with Delhi and improve relations with some people over here because they're getting close to coalition already. And from here, we look at a struggling golden horde and we think, okay, I do want to invade China, but let's wait a minute because China right now is kind of dealing with an internal disaster. You got Yuan and Wu kind of, Wu broke free. And so I'm kind of like, I don't want to interrupt China having a disaster. I'll let them have the disaster and I'll go after the Golden Horde instead. And the war with the Golden Horde is kind of gross how fast it ends. Adjust my map just a bit there for you. But the way I fight the Golden Horde is, well, let me explain something about the Golden Horde. They're already struggling. And at this point, it's 1365. So they are kind of internally collapsing already. And when I look at the war, it's like, it's telling me that I have like a 99.9% chance to win. Like they have like no troops available. They're really struggling. But what I really do is declare on the Golden Horde again with our CB given from our situation. And we just carpet siege them like crazy. And so every time that we siege out a province capital, the entire province is just given to us immediately. So I would say this war lasts about 6 to 8 months. And in 6 to 8 months, the entire of the Golden Horde has fallen. They put up almost no resistance, and the carpet siege just goes crazy. There's not many forts. They're too poor to afford forts. So again, this war is less than a year. And really, surprisingly, it's not that much antagonism. I thought it would probably be more antagonism, but it's not. It's also not a ton of value for us. Remember, like all these lands revert to 0 control. But what you do extract value is that you get more levies. I don't really know why you get levies. I think it's just because you have the extra bonus with Timur. But anyways, so what really this war accomplishes is just getting us more people to fight against China. So now we kind of have a situation where we have Wu, who's kind of broken free and owns, I don't remember exactly, but maybe something like this. So really, Wu owns the most valuable parts of China. And then you have Yuan, who, he's around, but right. So it's kind of like this split in China. We go ahead and invade Yuan. Of course, we use our CB as normal. And this war is not particularly hard because Yuan's dealing with a disaster. And a bunch of stuff is already broken free from Yuan. Like the stuff over here has gone over to Korea. You can see where kind of Korea is. Like this doesn't belong to Yuan either. So kind of just to notate that. But this war is again, this war is not that difficult. Yuan's really struggling. So we kind of just like, it does take us a while. There's probably only like a couple forts, maybe like 5 or so, but maybe it takes us a year or two. And Yuan's already lost, land over here. So it's really just something like this. And, we're kind of able to take this land up here, and that's A-okay. I will note that these people are really rebellious. I don't know why, but everyone else seems to kind of be not super hard to deal with. But these rebels are something that I do have to deal with. So it's just kind of like something to note, like Mongolia will defect and that sort of thing. And I even at some point just swapped to Mongolia culture because this will help this. That way they won't be rebellious. And I kind of actually didn't mean to do it. It was one of those things I like clicked it and then it happened and I thought there was going to be like an "are you sure?" But I kind of just rolled with it. So I swapped my culture. But I knew I was going to be swapping my culture to like Chinese culture anyways later, or that was the original plan. Now we gear up for what is probably the hardest war in the campaign. And it's a bloody war. It's rough out there because Wu down here has at least 150,000 guys. By this point, we're able to recruit up maybe 80,000 guys, but you can see that the difference is pretty staggering here. Wu is really, really strong. And a lot of this war is kind of like trying to bait Wu into bad decisions. So a lot of times I'll just like split off maybe like, a couple thousand guys. So I do a bit of a carpet siege with like, let's say 5,000 of my total army, just kind of like have them fan out in a way that's like, okay, just have them like cause chaos. Because remember, I still have that auto conquer. So the second that I siege anything, it becomes mine. And then with my big stack, I actually kind of just like send my big stack straight down to like the most valuable provinces down here, or I should say locations. Remember, we are Sunnis, so we're taking a massive amount of slaves every time we conquer anything. And I think the record amount of slaves comes from down here in China. I think I got 84K slaves from one siege, which was wild. And so those slaves are all sent back to my capital, which, is all the way over here. Anyhow, this war is really difficult. Some of the biggest, bloodiest battles I've seen. We're able to win a lot of them, but really it's the problem is we're losing men, and it's hard to replenish our men because they're so far away. Like a lot of their men are over here, and he can just get new men really, really close by. And he has so many more men to get. So it's like every time I win, I'm significantly winning battles. Let's say I fight like 50K versus 50K. He might lose 25 and I lose 10. But the problem is that he can get those 25K back faster than I can get the 10K back. But so anyways, without going into too much detail, the war is not easy. Very, very bloody war. And, I kind of find the best way, though, too, is kind of if we can avoid fighting for the most part, and then maybe find opportunities where they're a bit more isolated. Maybe they're chasing down these stacks that I've kind of spread out. And we are able to win, but this war, again, is just not super simple to pull off. But we do eventually get there, and we get our entire region. That's a core region, right? So our goal, of course, was to get that region over in China to be our core region, as I mentioned earlier in the campaign. But anyway, so we kind of just own like, a bunch of land here. Like, we kind of own most of this area now. And we go ahead and make our core region this area here. We run into a bit of a glitch where we are able to core the region. We run into a problem, a bit of a glitch with the game. I wanted to promote a regional culture here and move my capital over here, but I run into an issue. To do it, you have to have every location in East China and Taiwan count. And Taiwan's uncolonized. So I can't actually promote a regional culture, unfortunately. And I try to colonize and let's just say that like I try to colonize and it takes over 100 years. Currently in the command I got to 1480 and it's still not colonized. Like it takes so long. You're not exactly a colonial nation as the Timurids, but it is what it is. I did want to note a couple things that we kind of had to learn from other playthroughs about this is that hordes can delete cities for negative 75% cost. And this is really important for food because you want everything to be rural for better food production. And we have to disable a lot of buildings. There's a specific building that the Chinese have that gives them additional max control. I don't remember the name. It's something like with an like XH. I don't remember, but it gives like 10 max control. And it's super expensive to upkeep. So you have to turn these buildings off immediately. And honestly, I think we turn off some of the marketplaces and just like, we don't have a ton of money and we're not making any money because we don't have any control in any of these lands yet. Though once we make East China a core region, we do get up to like, I think like 12 control-ish in the entirety of this region, which is good, but it's not like insane, right? It's like, it's okay. But the plan is to move our capital over here and then kind of be like a naval nation, right? Like get some value over here in this land. And I also think that if I move here, I'll be able to colonize a bit better. because colonization is affected by like maritime presence as well. So, but I run into the issue here that I don't have enough paper in the market to move my capital, and it's also very expensive. So I kind of have to put that on hold for a bit. And I'm not really able to turn on like I have to like, kind of like turn off these factories. And again, just I can't really afford. When I have zero control everywhere, I can't really afford to have these buildings in operation. We go ahead and just go back and refocus in on our objective of forming the Mongol Empire. Let's say that it's, I don't know, 1375 to 1380 now. I will note that Timur died several times and I had to reload my save. I don't know why, but he tends to die a lot in his 30s. A bit annoying, and like yes, I could just call it GG there, but I want to see the run continue because if he dies in his 30s, like it would just be a restart. It happened to me, I think, just like 2 or 3 times, not like a crazy amount of times, but just to note that yes, he did die, and I had to reload my save when that happened. But anyhow, we go ahead and just go over here and invade this way. And these wars are pretty easy, pretty fast. And then we have to invade a little bit over in Muscovy to get to our objective of forming the Mongol Empire. And unfortunately, we're not able to form the Mongol Empire due to a glitch. And that glitch is that it says Mongolia already exists. So I'm just kind of like, okay, that's odd. And the reason this kind of sucks is because I wanted to be able to complete the situation. And to complete the situation, we need to form Mongolia. And one thing this would have done too is it gives -5 separatism in all your land. So it would have helped with rebels and that sort of thing. We did reform into a monarchy though, and we did kind of continue a little bit. And we started getting like really, really bad rebels. And we kind of played it out for a while. Again, I think I played till about 1480. But it became such a rebel sim that I kind of just called the campaign good. I did make a ton of money, but I literally had like 111 groups of rebels I had to fight all the time. And it's not like these rebels were particularly hard to fight. It just wasn't very enjoyable. It was taking me like over 100 years to colonize Taiwan. I don't know why it was just so slow, but I was starting to make a lot of money. I think I ended the campaign sitting on like 100,000 ducats. I just didn't want to deal with the endless rebel simulator. And I really didn't know how to fix that issue. Again, this is long after Timur had died. And just to know, the way it works is if your ruler is at least 150 total in the 3 categories. So meaning like, if your ruler would have to be essentially like a 50-50-50. So you have at least, I mean, not necessarily, you just have to reach a total of 150 points. And if you don't, then the Timur situation ends, which means you no longer have access to the other abilities. I would have loved to see what it would have been like if I could have promoted a regional culture, because that would have helped to be able to move my culture and then get some free, accept the cultures for free. And also the buff that I'm talking about that comes a bit later when you form the Mongol Empire is supposed to last 100 years and give you a pretty nice buff. So I don't really know. It becomes a situation of like you have so much unintegrated land, like so much. Like you'll have no control in your entire nation. We did end up moving our capital. I say we. I don't know why I say we. We're used to playing with Twitch or whatever, but I moved my capital over here to the coast, and I was able to get a lot of control along the coast, and making a lot of money, that sort of thing. And for some final numbers on the campaign, it's 1488, and I'm sitting on 65k ducats. I am down to 92 million pops. At some point, I was at 110 million, but we got like a little bit of a second bubonic plague, and so we did lose a healthy amount of people there. And with the second bubonic plague, you don't really have the options to isolate it like you do the first one. So it's just kind of like it happens, and you don't really get the options to deal with it the same way. I can raise 220k levies. My expected army size is 100,000, so it would be pretty easy for me to have a pretty large standing army if I wanted to. And I'm still trying to colonize Taiwan because I wanted to be able to finish that. And I just want to note the rebel situation and why I don't want to play the campaign any further. There is over 100 different groups of rebels, and I spent all my counter actions cycling through Rebel Crackdown to be able to manage this. And it's just like I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to deal with rebels forever, and I don't know when this ends. And I'm kind of to the point where it's like, well, if I was gonna play, I'm essentially just like playing as like China, right? Like I have control over here and then nowhere else. But I'm like, well, if I want to play a China run, maybe I should just play a China run. And again, the issue is just so much unintegrated land. And this has the effect of really hurting my crown power. And I don't really know the answer to this very well. The whole, like I don't have control over anything. Maybe that's just like the gameplay loop that it's supposed to be. But it's just not very fun to deal with. I would say, like, I guess you probably could world conquest with these guys. You just have to fight a lot of rebels along the way, and it would be pretty tedious. But I kind of just get to the point where it's like, man, I really, really don't want to fight this many rebels. And, maybe in the age of absolutism, you could finally start integrating area, which would be pretty useful. But there's just not much you can do when you have to integrate, 1,000 different provinces or something like that. And again, I did hit that mark of 3,277 locations to be able to form my formable, but I just wasn't able to do it. Pretty interesting nation. I'm not really sure maybe it's a skill issue as far as having to handle so many rebels and not being so proficient at doing it. I can deal with all the rebels, as I said. I just don't want to. Like it's just literally not fun. And I'm just like I don't want to do this. So, anyways, let me know what you guys thought, and let me know what you guys want to see in the future. This was actually someone in the comments from the last video I made wanted to see the Timurids. So let me know what you guys like to see next. Hopefully, a couple of these glitches get polished out by the time I get to launch. But I really did enjoy these guys. They were a lot of fun. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and have a good one.